Thank you, Senator Collins. We'll turn next to Senator Baldwin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to ask unanimous consent to enter into the record an April 11th, 2022 article from Reuters entitled "Fact Check of Fauci's 2004 Comments Do Not Contradict His Pandemic Stance."
Without objection.
Thank you. I want to join my colleagues, Dr. Fauci, in wishing you very well in your retirement, and thank you so much for your service to this country. I'm going to start with you for a question on basic research. I think we're falling short when it comes to providing sustained investments in preparedness. That is why I led the Disease X Act to provide sustained funding for BARDA to focus on medical countermeasure development for viral families of concern. We can't just keep on responding to the threat in front of us. Dr. Fauci, can you explain how investments in smallpox research have made us better prepared for this outbreak than had we not made those investments?
Thank you very much for that very important question, because it relates not only to smallpox and the extrapolation of knowledge to monkeypox, but it relates to virtually all elements of fundamental basic research that ultimately, when you get to a problem that's a public health problem, it can be applied. As I mentioned in my written and in my oral statement, the original work that had been done on orthopox viruses dating back to 2001 and 2, following the anthrax attacks, when we put a lot of work into developing the countermeasures that Assistant Secretary O'Connell mentioned regarding smallpox, allowed us, by getting another type of a vaccine that is less reactogenic and has less adverse events, which led to Jynneos, which is now the primary vaccine for monkeypox. So the relationship between the smallpox research that had been done for decades on orthopox viruses and the acceleration of that research when we had the bioterror threat in 2001 and 2002 allowed us to respond rapidly with already developed countermeasures in the form of TPOXX and Jynneos.
Thank you. Dr. Walensky, for me, as we had a chance to speak earlier, monkeypox is all too reminiscent of our initial response to HIV/AIDS. I actually started my career in 1986 on the Dane County Board of Supervisors. In that year, the first cases of HIV/AIDS were reported in Wisconsin. There was a tremendous amount of fear and paranoia and sorrow in our community. We had to fight both the disease and the fear and the stigma and the discrimination that was present in the community. So, Dr. Walensky, can you describe CDC's efforts to work with the LGBTQ plus community to combat misinformation, to reduce stigma, and to ensure that folks have access to care?
Thank you, Senator, for that question. Their involvement and integration into our response has been critical. One of the first things that we did when we heard about the case on May 17th was outreach between our smallpox branch and our HIV branch, because we knew that it was both those communities, both those scientists that were going to need to come together to make a robust response. We've had extraordinary LGBTQ community. We've met several times with the Human Rights Campaign, the LGBTQ serving FQHCs, Interpride and Pride organizers. We've facilitated best practice exchanges with tourism hubs. We have palm cards for Provincetown, Fire Island, Palm Springs, and then we've supported these large events like Black Gay Pride and Boise Pride, Charlotte Pride. Importantly, one of the things that we did early on, and this was one of the lessons learned from HIV decades ago, ago, was that on May 27th, we first published an iteration of sexual health information on monkeypox for the LGBTQ community, so they would understand what practices would decrease their risk of monkeypox. All of this engaging a very robust, very active, and very helpful and informed LGBT community that have been essential in not only working with us, but in educating their own community. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll enter my last question into the record for Secretary O'Connell on what ASPR is doing to ensure this delay in vaccine availability is not a problem in the future, and anything you need from Congress to help address this. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Baldwin. I'll be turning the gavel over